Hello students, today we're here at the lathe teaching you about how do I take my pin pieces and get them down roughed or rounded, ready to start the final shape on our pins. So here at the lathe we got a couple of things we need to worry about. First of all, I got my on and off switch. Some of mine have an RPM meter right here. I've got my tailstock and I've got my headstock, and then we have our pin mandrel piece in here. So first thing is, how do I mount it up? I'm going to pull my tool rest out of the way. I'm going to unlock my tailstock and pull it back. Sometimes you got to take a little finger to push that little nut in the bottom kind of back out of the way. Here on my mandrel I should have 3 bushings. I'm going to take 2 of them off, leaving 1. I want to put my pin pieces on just like we had them before we cut it all apart. Now my pin pieces have had the barrels cleaned out and get all the glue out of the insides. I've come and barrel trimmed them and squared these outside edges to the insides of the tubes. So now we're going to go ahead and slide it on. So my outside goes in, and then I put a bushing, which we'll explain the purpose of later, and then I put my next side on and I put on my next bushing. Okay, so I've got my pieces lined up like they were before we cut them apart. Now I'll bring my tailstock in and stop at about 1/4 of an inch before it tightens on the bushing. And now I'll go ahead and do that's my coarse adjustment. Now my fine adjustment I'm going to loosen, and now I'm going to tighten this up. This is going to tighten everything together as I push it in. And I want to make it fairly tight, so I'm going to tighten it up until my tailstock right here, I look here on the tailstock of the bed, until it starts to move back. And then I want to tighten it up here. So having this at the right tightness will make your job a lot easier as we come to the lathe. Now on the lathe here, how we set up the tool rest to get started depends on which tool we're going to be using. I do have gouges. This is a traditional woodworking tool. It's rounded on the bottom. It cuts a little bit kind of more like a pocket knife, and you got to hold it on the right angle to go ahead and get it rolling. This one you probably want Mr. Tolbert to come and demonstrate it when you do yours. But for this tool, we're going to bring the tool rest up and adjust it so that the cutting point is going to be just above center. So when I say center, I mean the center of the mandrel piece going through here. So I'm going to lower this down, knowing I'm going to hold it something like this. So when I'm driving on the lathe, my tool I'm going to hold. The wood's going to spin. I want to have one hand on the back of the tool. That's what I usually choose to do my dominant hand. My other hand's going to run its finger right underneath the rest here, so I have some micro adjustment. The main reason why people blow stuff up or destroy things on the lathe is because they're trying to do it like this and they have no control. So have this micro adjustment up here will help out with that. Now with the gouge, I can't go straight because as it hits, it's going to roll. And that's a big problem that blows things up. So I'm going to change my angle of attack, something like here. So we're going to turn it on. We're going to set it to around 1,000 RPMs. So we're going to let it speed up here. It's set to about 1,800. We're going to slow it down. That's the other way than slow. We're going to slow it down to around 1,000 RPM. So we're doing a lot of our roughing. We want to have it about 1,000 RPM. Now, some of my lathes have the meter on them. The other ones have a line. Just put it on the line. So I'm at about 1,100 RPM. We're close enough. But the main point is I'm going slow. So I'll bring my hand over here. I'll bring my tool here and plan my plan of attack. So I'm going to rotate it up so it cuts just on that very corner. Notice I adjusted and pulled it out because it was cutting a little bit too deep. So I just want to kind of take it, go across, and I can work my way both left-handed or right-handed, and then left-handed if I want to go the other way. Notice I'm kind of fine-tuning it as I go a little bit so it cuts nice and smooth. And that's what more traditional woodworkers would do, is they would use that tool for a lot of things, but they've practiced and been very good with it. I find with students, to do something a little bit easier is to use a scraper. Now here I've got 3 basic sizes of scrapers, but you'll notice they're flat on both sides. They have a fingertip end on them, kind of rounded, and they don't have a very big angle here on the back. So where I had the gouge and it was set up kind of funky, with the scraper it's much simpler. I just hold it level to the floor. Just like this, nice and level to the floor. And then as I come up and work on it, I put my hand up here on the tool rest in the same position. Now, I want this top of the tool to be right at my center. So I'm just a skosh low, so I'm going to raise it up just a little. And then we're going to go ahead and move the camera around to another side. So hopefully you can see a lot more as I turn it. Hopefully I won't get too much in the way of the camera there. So, with that camera set up now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. So now as I come across with my scraper, I have my tool off to the side of my body. I have the same RPM. I'm still just a skosh low. I'm going to raise it up again there. There's my center. Now I'll simply just come and engage the nose barely and work my way across. Now this is more of a scraping operation than a cutting. But it accomplishes the task a little bit easier in my opinion. Now over on this other piece where I still got my sharp corners, I'm going to change how I do my attack a little bit. I'm going to go in with the nose about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to go across. Actually, it's more like 1/8 of an inch. So as I'm turning, I'm looking at the wood at the top to see how it's coming off, but I'm also looking at the tool. And between those two, I can see where I'm headed. So as I go too aggressively, notice it stops. Well, this one needs to be tightened a little, so I'm going to loosen it right here. Tighten it up a little there, tighten it up just a skosh here, and lock that back in place. And I'm going to come and finish this up by taking the tool in a little, and then over where I've already been, about 1/8 of an inch in, and then over where I've already been. And then I'll take a little finer paths across, and I'll do that, and I'll work away my corner. So I got a little bit of flat, but my biggest corners are gone. Now that my corners are gone, I can speed it up to where a lathe usually runs in more of a speed range. So I'm going to go from 1,000 RPM closer to 2,000 RPM. So right now I'm at 2,000 RPM. I just need to take it down to be about 1/2 inch in size, and I'm about 5/8 right now, so I'm not going to go too much. So I'm just going to smoothly go across. Here again, controlling it by putting my finger on the tool rest there, my thumb above the tool, nice and level with it, and I slowly take it across. Okay, and that's basically how I want to rough it down. Realize a couple things. Vibrations on the lathe are not your friends. So if you hear loud or you hear obnoxious vibrations, something's probably loose or we're holding something incorrectly. That's a come get Mr. Tobler kind of a thing. Okay, so sometimes I'll hear it and I'll come to you, but that's what we'll do. If you make a mistake and the big chunk flies off, stop, turn it off. Come get Mr. Tobler. He'll talk about what tool you were just using it, how you're using it to see what you were doing wrong so that you can fix it next time you go about with your next pieces on your lathe. I'm going to come in here though, and as I take it off, I want to do a couple things. First one is, I'm not finished, so I'm with my pencil. I'm going to mark each side. Okay? I'm going to call this one B, just so I know which ones go together that I have here in the process. Now I'm going to unlock my tailstock, push it out of the way. I'm going to carefully pull off my pieces. Just like that. I'm going to put my bushings back on. So notice I never even set them down.